It's time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome on into another special Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle. I'm the aforementioned Trey Lyle. Joining me this week was a man who had a very difficult task this past week. That was Fox Sports' Eric Brennan. He also is the play-by-play announcer for the ARCA Menard Series as well as the CARS Tour. He also had his first truck race where he was the first man to kind of be able to speak on behalf of the sport to a national audience after the death of Kyle Busch. He was calling the first race. Unfortunately, for weather, it didn't last that long and had to be moved to Sunday. But we talked about how difficult that week was prepping for this kind of career-making moment for Eric Brennan, his goals in broadcasting, how he balances a full-time job. Yes, a real full-time job and the racing broadcast, and his grassroots experience and seeing the people that he has seen at the CARS Tour level now flourish in the NASCAR level. Eric Brennan now heads into the Inferno.
Now it's time for
Buddy, and welcome to Timmonsville, South Carolina. I'm Eric Brennan alongside Matthew Dillner, and Jacqueline Drake will be joining us trackside here shortly. And as you can see, Matthew, we packed this place. Matt Hirschman gets a superb jump from the pole. Meyer slots into second spot, double wide, fourth on back as Zach Brewer is trying to get up to and past Caraway 2 winner Joby Coulter, with Hirschman leading lap number 1. Pulls a half car length advantage off 2. Dale Jr. just behind trying to size up. Green, Honeycutt, and Diaz tangle. Junior squeezes by to the top side as they pile up behind.
To go into the Inferno with Trey.
Bringing into the Inferno now from Fox Sports, the play-by-play announcer this past week for the Craftsman Truck Series race, Eric Brennan. Eric, good morning or good afternoon. We're recording this in the afternoon, so good afternoon. Glad to have you join us. Thanks so much for doing this. Let's dive into unfortunately, one of the most unique broadcasts you had to be a part of. Let's take us through kind of last week for you, where you think about the beginning of the week. It's going to be this kind of monumentous moment for your play-by-play career. You're going to be doing one of the national series in NASCAR. Then you have to kind of be the first voice for this unspeakable tragedy. What was kind of the process of last week like, leading to a weekend in which you didn't even know when you were going to race in the truck series?
Yeah, it was tough. Tremendous opportunity that we kind of had on the schedule for a little while. And I was kind of telling this story yesterday to a couple of people, but leading up to the race, the story was Kyle going for win number 70 at the place where he won his first one. And Thursday morning, kind of got a hunch that something wasn't right, and then kind of reached out to a few people, got some more information in the early morning, and then by mid-afternoon, it was like, yeah, everything's going to change here. Um, I'll be honest, I did not sleep at all Thursday night. My heart is with Kyle's family and those who knew him, works with him, loved him. RCR for having to go through this again. Um, I mean, man, I can't really imagine. As far as preparation and preparedness, the focus kind of shifted to making sure that we of course acknowledged all that Kyle was able to accomplish in his life and in his truck career. But the secondary important element, at least for me, kind of came in from a sense of I wanted this race to be a distraction for those who were hurting. We all turn to sports, and racing is something that is the ability to break free from the average lives that we're leading and what we're doing during the day. And I think the race getting pushed to Sunday helped make that a little more possible. And even for me, in that moment, that was my chance to escape and break free too of the reality. And then once you get to the end of it and you get set to sign off, you unfortunately kind of ease back into what is the new reality of the sport, and that this prominent and impressive figure is no longer with us. So um, quite the emotional roller coaster ride. To be quite honest, I went home with my family that afternoon. We live in Mooresville, not far from the track, and watching pre-race ceremonies for the 600 and seeing how that all unfolded, that was the time that I think I allowed it to kind of run through me in a way that it hadn't in the days prior. So really, really tough circumstances, but I'm glad that, it was a wild race, a little bit crazy, chaotic, a lot of cautions, but I'm glad that People seem to enjoy it, and I think for a little while it was that temporary break from the sadness and circumstances that we were all living in.
So you have the difficult element of everything that built into the week, which was the aspects of the tragedy with Kyle Busch, and then you have the unfortunate circumstances of the race itself getting moved to Sunday morning, which honestly was probably a cool spot considering there was no Monaco GP that weekend. But talk about the race itself. It ended up having to be kind of like a time limit. It felt was that kind of unique to you being a play-by-play broadcaster, where in the last 10 minutes of the race you were counting down the 10 minutes, not the laps.
Yeah, it was really one of the first times that I've seen that unfold that way. And it was unique, and I mean, I watch all forms of racing, so I think I made the parallel at some point that it was similar to motocross, where or supercross. Now they went to a time format, so they'll count it down to the end of the clock, and then it's two to go. Essentially, white flag next time by. But the variable for us is we traditionally have this overtime format. And now we knew that it was not going to be possible if a caution came out. And sure enough, we had that happen late. So, and quite frankly, the way that the communication was going from, us to our producers who are in direct communication with NASCAR, it sounded like there was maybe a bit of uncertainty as to whether or not we were going to go back racing. I seemed like they were trying. And then once the clock, no pun intended, struck 12, we got the call white flag on the 34 next time by. Really unique circumstance. And I think the fact that the drivers knew that that was a potential that could happen. I don't know if that was pouring fuel on the fire on what was already a really aggressive race. Everyone was really aggressive with their blocks. The runs were massive. I love the way that they prepped the track, which they've been doing it the last few years, and it seemed to work out well for all three series. But yeah, really, really different circumstance. I mean, I'm a race fan at heart, so I of course want to see it go the distance. And I think the way that those trucks are racing that day, the finish probably would have been pretty wild. Now, if we were just going to give it one attempt, we probably would have wadded up a bunch of trucks. So maybe it's a good thing we didn't do it this time by. But I am so happy that the race in the fall is on the oval this year, because I think it's going to be just as crazy as what it was, here in the late spring, early summer months. So, but yeah, really, really odd circumstance. If I had to vote, I would like to not be in that position again, but I understand why we ended up there. And judging by the way the forecast was all weekend and how quickly it was changing, it kind of worked out that we got it in at all.
Here with Eric Brennan, Fox Sports and CARS Tour play-by-play guy. So that's a role you've picked over the last couple of years. What has that been like to kind of get into like the biggest series in grassroots racing? What it feels like, the CARS Tour feels like it has exploded in popularity over the last 3 seasons. Since the new ownership group has come in. What has that been like for you in the broadcast booth, being able to call, maybe the most prominent late model stock series, short track series, whatever you want to call it, in the country right now?
A blast. And I've told everyone, no matter where my life takes me, no matter where my career goes, I still always want to be able to call car store races. The racing is unbelievable. The tracks that we visit are like the backbone of the sport. Some of them, like Langley this weekend, I mean, that place is a palace. They've got a playground there for little kids. They've got hospitality areas for some of the VIPs and sponsors. The track itself is in beautiful shape. There's not a blade of grass that is cut a different way than any place else in the property. And then you've got some of your places that are a little more rustic, a little more old school, but the racing is unbelievable. The talent level is off the charts. The amount of good racers that we've got coming up through that pipeline. And one thing that I've really loved about it is, there's also a Cars Tour West element that Kevin and a bunch are doing a really good job of trying to stand up out there. And one of the former champions of those branches realized, like, okay, I've kind of proven myself in this region. I'm going to go run the Cars Tour now in Jace Hale. He's had a really rough year on the late model stock side, but his brother Colton, they're multi-generational racers. They've kind of been doing it together, with Colton running a pro late model, Jace a late model stock. There seems to be this growing reputation for the series. If I want to prove that I have what it takes to maybe move up to the next level, the car store is where I got to go and I got to be good at. And I love that the series has kind of gone into this circumstance and this situation, and it's been remarkable. And I'm really fortunate to be in the position that I'm in to kind of cover that series. And everyone from top to bottom, from the officials, from leadership group, Kip Childress, Carson Elledge does so much for them. They all love what they do. And when we show up at the racetrack, when we show up at Langley on Thursday or Friday, but when we get there, it is everyone is happy to be there. They know their role, they know their responsibility, and it's honestly one of the most fun times I've ever had working in the sport.
You talk about that, and you've been very entrenched in the grassroots, and you've been basically the guy for ARCA this season as well. What has that been like for you to now kind of your development in terms of growth is similar to now these drivers like the Mini Tyrells of the world, the Butterbean Queens of the world, where you were calling grassroots races, and then you got ARCA races, and now you're getting truck races. It feels like you're kind of going through the same developmental arc as these drivers. What has that kind of been like to build relationships with, some of the future stars that we could see on Saturdays and Sundays in the sport?
To be honest, dream come true. I mean, I never thought that I would be in a position to call a CARS Tour race, let alone an ARCA race, let alone a truck race. I mean, and I was actually having this conversation with Butterbean on Friday at Charlotte, just saying like, man, it's really cool to like kind of work through this system together. And Connor Zilic is another one. I was with the WKA when he was running, those races. They would run Daytona Kart Week basically between Christmas and New Year's every year. And we would go down like on the 26th, we would run 27, 28, 29, and then come home on the 30th. And Connor went 3 for 3, I think, in 2019 with his 3 junior classes he was entered in, and then I started doing some of the ARCA race. He was running CARS Tour in 23. I started doing some ARCA races in 23, 24 that he was running. And I said, man, it's really cool. Now, granted, I think he's about half my age, but it's really cool that we're both kind of working our way up. And him and Butterbean are definitely way more talented than I am. But it does make for a stronger connection. It makes it a little bit easier for me to tell some of their life story, some of how they got there to kind of bundle it all together. So when Butterbean won the ARCA title, I love that I was there in Toledo because I got to talk about the 2 major supporters and sponsors that got him to that point, which were still on that race car before he announced the Ram deal. And having that past relationship and kind of walking a similar path, that's what gave me that chance. And really, a lot of the things that happen in this sport and in life is relationship based. And having the ability to reach out to a few people, have some conversations, maybe get some intel or insight that they wouldn't be willing to tell some other people, it goes a long way in terms of one, me being confident to deliver the information on a race broadcast. But two, I think it also allows them to know that I'm trying my best to shine a spotlight on everybody's talents and abilities. And that's really all I want to do. I spent a lot of my younger years trying to convince my friends in New York that racing was cool. And now I feel like it's my responsibility to present that what these men and women are doing in the race cars is badass. And the best way that I could do that is to talk more about what they do, where they came from, how they got there. And hopefully we're doing them a good enough job, but it's cool to be able to kind of float to the top with some of these. But I'm pretty sure that your Butterbeans and, obviously Connor Zilic is already in the Cup Series. I'm pretty sure they're going to surpass anything I'll ever get to be able to do in terms of racing resumes. But nevertheless, it's fun.
Who is someone that's currently in the Cars Tour or even in the ARCA Menard series that you are kind of like, maybe no one's really truly talking about them yet, that's going to make a splash in the next coming years?
I think the easy answer is Landon Lewis. He's our defending champion on the late model stock side. Missed the season opener this year to run the truck race, which he did great at there in St. Petersburg. And I think Landon's already on a few people's radars. I think someone who pops into mind, and I've known him for a while, and he doesn't have a lot of late model stock experience, is Carson Lofton. Tour type modified driver, 3rd generation racer from the South. Carson is a tremendous kid who has proven that he could do well in tour type modifieds, but he's only in his 2nd year of late model stock racing. He won the Rookie of the Year honors last year on the late model stock side. He's with Nelson Motorsports. Has won a lot of championships and titles. They won a race with Landon Huffman as well a couple of years ago. But Carson just that transfer from a tour type modified to a late model stock car is a pretty dramatic one to make. And Carson seems to be doing it in stride. I'm glad that him and Nelson signed up to do 2026 and do another year and continue to build off what they started in 2025. And they're just tremendous at what they do. And on the ARCA side, I would say, obviously Andy Jankowiak is towing it for all of the short track racers, and his story is incredible beyond just what his racing resume shows. But I really have taken a liking to Matt Kemp, kind of local to the Midwestern central part of the country, if you will. And he runs a lot for fast track. Sometimes he helps out when they don't have somebody else for the fourth car. Other times he'll try to run the whole race. But he's definitely someone who, if given the right opportunity, he could manage his equipment, get to the end, and I think really outperform a lot of the equipment that he's driving. I was talking to him the other day. I hope he gets a shot in something significant at some point because he seems to have the right attitude, the right approach, and just seeing what he's been doing and some of the equipment that he's been driving, especially compared to some of his other teammates. Very impressive when he gets a chance to run a whole race. So that may be one that's a little bit out of left field, but after watching him for about a year and a half, I believe that if given the right chance, he could prove he could do this.
And full disclosure for our listeners, you have a full-time job. Might be the coolest part about it. You have an actual full-time job, and you broadcast like as a on the side. What is that balance like? Where most you have to work some days, but like there's also a big race on the weekend, or you have to leave on a Friday or a Thursday. Like what has that balance been like for you, managing kind of the full-time job you have and this kind of goal-oriented career that you want to build?
It's tough, but I got a lot of support. To be honest, even on this call, I've got 3 phone calls that try to come in and 8 Teams messages about something that I've been ignoring. So, but I work in corporate security at the local utility down here in Charlotte, kind of managing our video management systems. And I've been here for 4 years officially, but I've kind of worked for them in a contracting role back to 2019. It's a lot. I mean, it's a traditional 40-hour week, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job. And then I've got a wife and 2 kids at home. So my 2 girls are, about three and a half coming up on and about to turn 2 in August. So um, it is a lot to juggle. Usually after I get them to bed on weeknights, that's when I start looking at my prep for the week ahead. So tonight it'll be bedtime routine for the girls, and then I'll shift gears to the entry list for Langley this weekend for CARS Tour. And luckily, the week after that, I got a week off, and then week after that, it's back in the ARCA booth for Pocono, and then week after that, it's Berlin and Elko back to back. So um, trying to juggle it all, and fortunately, a lot of my bosses and teammates at work understand I got to use a lot of my vacation time to go to races, and fortunately, my wife understands that. But it's been cool. I'm very lucky because there's a lot of people in similar positions that don't have that flexibility and grace, and I'm in a spot where I can kind of massage what I need to do both. But hopefully the day comes where I'll know which career is going to flourish greater. Um, I should say off the record, but we'll put it on the record because we're recording this. But obviously, I want it to be on the racing side. So, but either way, I enjoy what I do at Duke as well. So, but it is a lot of hours. So
Well, you're setting me up for my final question for you with Eric Brennan. What is your goals ultimately with doing broadcasting? You have to have like I don't want to say a bucket list of races to do because you've done some pretty big races in this country, the Snowball Derby, for example. But ultimately, what is your goal by maintaining this kind of maintaining this broadcasting rule?
So to be honest, I actually met the original goal I set on Sunday. I had told not only my wife, my friends, people at Fox, it's like, what do you want to do? And it's like, I would love to get to the point where I can call truck races. I mean, so now that I got there, obviously the goal's bigger. And I think that I don't want to make it specific to a race or a series or anything like that. But I really would like to get to a point in my life where racing can be my career, and I don't necessarily have to have 3 different jobs essentially. I would like to get to that point where I could live and work in the space that I love the most. And I don't really know how close or far away I am from that, I do like the pathway that I'm on, the relationships that I feel like I've made, the work that I'm putting out there, the reception from people, which has been very overwhelming, and I appreciate it so much. Um, so I guess that would be my next goal, is to get to a point where, like, even if it's just for a few years, that this could be my job. Just working and racing could be all I got to do to pay bills. Because right now I'm not exactly there yet, but I'm enjoying the ride anyway.
At eBrennan45 on Twitter, Eric Brennan, the Fox and CARS Tour play-by-play announcer for mainly the ARCA Menards and CARS Tour Series, plus a little trucks after his truck debut this past weekend at Charlotte. Eric, thanks so much for some time. I know you are a busy man, so I appreciate you fitting me in during your busy week.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Yes, sir. That was Eric Brennan in the Inferno. Thanks so much to Eric, and thanks so much to our own Mark Crystal, who helped me get that interview booked. So shout out to Mark. Great ARCA coverage. Make sure you follow Mark Crystal at frontstretch.com. But thanks so much to Eric for that time. And now let's focus on what's up with this week with What's Still Hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Joining me now, a compadre at frontstretch.com, is Caleb Barnes at Caleb Barnes _. He joins me for, I would say, a majority of these podcasts. Caleb, hope you're doing well. Let's dive right into the news from today. The NASCAR Appellate Court, whatever you want to call it, upheld the National Motorsports Appeal Panel. Today heard an appeal on behalf of Ryan Preece, and under that, they said the appellant violation rules set in forth in penalty notice. The panel affirms and upholds the original penalty assessed by NASCAR. In reaching the above decision, the panel provided the following explanation. Although not a unanimous decision, NASCAR and RFK Racing presented competing interpretations of common data. Neither side clearly proved their point, but Mr. Preece's comments showed that he chose to not cut his competition any breaks. What do you think, if it's in the phrasing like they use there, not cutting your competition any breaks instead of intentionally wrecking, what kind of precedent could this set?
That's a tough question to ask because I feel like, what Ryan Preece did, and when we talked about, like, the only mistake that he made was admitting over the radio that he was about to that he was fed up with Ty Gibbs, and you see this a lot with drivers where they say that they're, like, done with someone and that they're gonna give it to them, and then they never do. And that was a thing, I can't remember how many years ago, where people would talk about, like, they're just all bark no bite, and, like, they actually wanted, like, that's what fans enjoy, is whenever drivers actually go and do something about it. But yeah, it's just it's just one of those things where it seems like such, like, a small line to be looking at specifically those comments, and just that wording seems really just odd and specific and almost nitpicky, in my opinion, to versus just a guy that goes and dumps someone without saying anything on the radio. Like, you can kind of tell with your eyes visually when someone's finally had enough, and when they've decided that they're going to race someone hard, and like. So I just still am not a fan of the ruling, and even today's, like, penalty report just kind of further confirms that, and just feels like their Priest is kind of being made another example out of. But then at the same time, like, I don't know how this sort of thing will be officiated in the future, because again, like, if you see someone seemingly intentionally wreck someone, but they didn't say anything on the radio, then like. It's just like, where do you go to officiate it? It just seems like it's a very kind of balls and strikes type of call. And unfortunately, Ryan Preece has gotten the wrong end of the deal. And then as much as fan support was on his side, like, I don't think anyone expected him to actually succeed in his appeal.
Yeah, I just don't like the phrasing of do not cut his competitors any breaks. I mean, that's, what if you do something similar for the lead? You shouldn't cut your competitor a break for the lead or for the win. So I don't like the phrasing of it. I didn't agree with the penalty in the first place. There's another penalty he could technically make, a final appellant Will they do that? Maybe. But we will see. Another big decision that maybe NASCAR, the sport as a whole, kind of has to make is regard to Kyle Busch and what should they do about his Hall of Fame candidacy. We already know he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Steve O'Donnell has said that, which, by the way, side note, I want to give credit to Steve O'Donnell for how he handled everything this weekend, from his press conference on Friday to his tribute they did pre-race while we had Samantha and Brexton and Lennox and the Busch family and RC and his family and the entire sport essentially right there. Do want to give credit, or credit is due to how Steve O'Donnell handled this weekend, but there's now a conversation around Kyle Busch and how they should handle his Hall of Fame candidacy. Should they waive the 3-year waiting period, make him eligible to place on the ballot in the next class, or a la Roberto Clemente, when he tragically passed away in baseball, have a special election that he inducted with this class in January 2027, or do nothing about it? He has the 3-year waiting period. Obviously, this is still very raw emotions, but what do you think should be done when it comes to kind of how they handle when to put Kyle Busch in the Hall of Fame? Not is he going to be in the Hall of Fame? Just when do you think it should be done?
Honestly, this is one of those things where, like, I don't really have any strong opinions on it one way or the other, because, like, again, you mentioned it's all still so raw. Like, it just happened. And as much as I think it would be very ultra respectful to do the thing where they make him an addition in this next class, at the same time, I just feel like it's still too early to even have those conversations yet. I know it's been something that a few people have thrown out here and there, but I think ultimately, like, making a decision on that, it'd be best to wait another, like, a few months and make some sort of an announcement later this summer or this fall or into the off season. But at the same time, like, I've just heard a lot of different things about like people, the way that what they knew from Kyle, and I also think it would be, like, one way or the other. I mean, his accomplishments are going to be recognized, and whether or not they decide to make Kyle Busch wait the full 3-year period and then get voted on, or whether or not they allow him to be eligible next year, I feel like that's probably the most tangible solution, just based on what we've seen out of NASCAR, out of the Hall of Fame voting process in the past. Ultimately, part of me kind of would hope that maybe they wait the 3 years, and then in that time period, maybe we also see that change in the voting process that everybody's been asking for, because there's been enough said about that as well. But yeah, we're just at this point, like, I feel like the most probable thing would be for him to be on the ballot next year. As for just like I said, I don't know that I have any super strong preferences right now, just because, again, like, we're barely a week removed from the news first coming out, and again, it's such a weird thing because everybody knows that Kyle's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but at the same time, it just feels like we haven't had enough of a period yet to let everybody get kind of their emotion out from just the raw reaction to losing a driver. I mean, that was, for me, like, it still didn't even really set in until Sunday, seeing Samantha and Brexton on the grid, and like, just the couple days after that, like, it's still setting in for a lot of people.
It is indeed. I think either answer could work. The Roberto Clemente answer, which is basically make him part of the 27 class. I think waiving the 3-year period and just putting him in the next class is the way to do it as well. We've already been into kind of how maybe the voting of the Hall of Fame should change entirely. Could you just make a special exception, just make him an additional member? I don't know. It's such a unique case there. Anyways, well, someone who may be making a unique Hall of Fame case and is improving on ovals is the one, the only SVG, as we now make him the focus of the soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Short track racing.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Shane, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but a lot of people are surprised at how well it was today.
Yeah.
Should we be surprised?
I don't know. It's hard. Like, I had an amazing day, but I'm pissed. Just bad choose and should be top 5 or 6. We had an amazing day and then just didn't execute at the end. But it was really cool to run up front all day. Obviously, gifted a good starting position by the rain out. Yeah, filthy with myself for the end. Should have been a bit better.
Do you agree with the idea to stay out there?
Yeah, it was cool to lead. Yeah, that was awesome fun.
SVG. Shout out to Dalton Hopkins, by the way, and a little John Newby for getting that audio there. SVG led some laps in the Coke 600. There was definitely a portion of the race where, like, oh my God, he might win the Coke 600 because of the rain short and obviously going to Daniel Suarez. But I flipped to you, Caleb. Is this a big signal that SVG is getting closer and closer to being, I don't want to say a master of ovals, but at least competitive enough on ovals?
I would say so. Like, a lot of times I'm kind of hesitant to be like, oh, this is the turning point and all that stuff. But I mean, I do think one factor that's very largely playing into this was his like starting position. It just makes such a difference to be able to start up there, and as opposed to having to start in the field and try to make your way through, especially your typical front runners, the Hendrick, the Gibbs, the Penske cars. You can kind of expect, if those guys start further back deep in the field, that they will find enough speed to be able to work their way through. But a team like Trackhouse, so far in this season, they haven't shown that speed to be able to get unstuck from deep in the field. So I think that Watkins Glen win was a huge setup for it. But then also the fact that we were able to get practice in, even the qualifying was rained out, like that also helped a little bit. But getting practice in, Shane got to work with his car. He's had the experience in the years past now with some of these races. He's getting more and more comfortable on the ovals, and I'll be really curious to see kind of the next few weeks. I'm looking at the schedule right now because it's like you got Nashville. Shane, I think he kind of struggled at Dover, at least at the start, and Nashville's another concrete track. But then I feel like he could be pretty decent at Michigan and Pocono as long as he starts up close enough to the front of the field. And then you got the street course, Sonoma back to back, and he's got an opportunity to continue to show that he's learned from last year, and that again, some weeks it just happens that you get put in a bad situation the week before, or you have a bad qualifying lap, you get put further back. But I think that was a huge confidence builder for him to start up front and stay up front most of the entire race. I know the finish wasn't exactly what he had hoped for, and even then some of that might have even just been because of the rain out. Like, if we had gotten restarted and gone the full distance, I wonder what Shane could have been able to do. Who knows, maybe he would have stayed back there. But I was super impressed by him running up there all night, and I was going to say like he belonged, but that's even a bad, because he did belong up there. He started up there, he stayed there, as opposed to some of the other guys who started up front and then dropped. I mean, even Daniel Suarez started up front, he started closer to the front, dropped a little bit, and then they used some of that strategy to get back to the front at the end. But yeah, I mean, it was a great night for Shane. It does, like he mentioned, being frustrated that he didn't get the finish that he deserved. That does kind of suck. But I mean, I think that there's been a lot of talks about, can Shane put together good, being adequate on the ovals to get himself into the chase at the end of the year or the end of the regular season. And I mean, if he's running like that, I don't even think it's going to be that much of a question. I think it's going to take all the suspense out of it. So we'll eventually see. We'll have to probably revisit this in a few weeks. But that was just a fantastic run, and I do think it's kind of a turning point for Shane leveling out on the ovals. I'll be curious to see if he can get to a point where he's going up and competing, kind of like we saw AJ Allmendinger towards the end of his some of his Xfinity time with Kaulig. He started becoming a contender on some of the ovals as well. So we'll see if Shane can get there sometime in the next couple weeks, the next couple months, maybe the next year or two. We'll see.
Well, there's only one thing left to do, and that's wrap this podcast up with some final thoughts.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Caleb Barnes, you're first. Anything you want to rant, rave, or review? The floor is yours.
I just wanted to bring some attention to the point standings. First off, Ty Gibbs sitting in fourth is pretty impressive, I feel like. Carson Hocevar and Daniel Suarez, both top 10, 9th and 10th, is also very impressive for people that maybe feel like they might have got lucky with their wins. Carson won at a super speedway. Suarez got a rain shortened win. Well, their speed throughout the year has them top 10 in points. Brad Keselowski's in 11th. I do want to bring attention to there's a few of the names that I'm starting to get concerned about. Obviously, Ross Chastain and Joey Logano are two guys that we expect to contend that are below the cut line right now. But the two that I'm worried about from maybe your two most powerful teams are William Byron and Chase Briscoe. Now, those Toyotas are the fastest thing on the planet right now, especially those Gibbs Toyotas plus Tyler Reddick. And all it takes is for Briscoe to put together a string of races. But he already had put himself in the hole at the start of the season. And one guy and William Byron, on the other hand, is the guy that I'm worried might be on the verge of digging himself in a hole. He's had some really bad luck this year, but it's also turned into one of those things where I just mentioned the benefit of a guy like Shane Van Gisbergen. He's getting to start up in the front of the field. He's able to maintain that track position, doesn't have to worry about getting caught back in the dirty air. Guys like William Byron and Chase Briscoe, because of these bad races, these bad finishes, Chase was having a great race over the weekend and then took himself out in a crash. I can't remember what happened to William Byron. He had driven himself up and then had something happen and ended up going like a lap down at one point. And those compound into putting yourselves back at the qualifying metric. Don't get the lap that you want to. You start deeper in the field. You have to overcome all that. And again, those are two cars that, especially the Toyota, Hendrick is still kind of searching for some of that speed this year, but those are two cars, two teams, two drivers that in an instant could hit on something this summer and go on a stretch of a couple weeks where they're in victory lane or they're constantly finishing top 5 and they could easily distance themselves from the cut line. My worry is that if you play, what's the phrase? If you play with fire, eventually you get burned. I think that's the phrase. If not, then maybe it goes a little bit differently. But my worry is that they're going to play around too long around this cut line, and you might see a few more of these guys end up not falling off. Like I think some people are expecting maybe the 97 or the 77 to maybe fall off at some point, and I don't know that they will. So I'm a little bit worried about those guys at this point. We still got a lot of racing to go before we get to the chase, but yeah, those guys, it's like you better watch out. You better find something, hit on something quick, or else you could be in real danger zone for what those guys are, what equipment those guys are in, and what their expectations are every week.
Sneaky right there, Caleb Barnes. Ultimately, I just want to go with just the emotions of this week. I think the drivers, like NASCAR, lived up to the moment. And I wasn't covering the sport in 2001. Last week we spent a lot of times comparing Kyle's death to Dale Earnhardt and Kobe Bryant, and for how emotional that weekend was and how difficult that weekend was, considering it was, I believe, the first time ever that all 3 races were rain shortened, essentially affected by weather. And just to kind of get the sense, like you definitely felt the love in the community that NASCAR brings, the uniqueness to it. And it was a moment where NASCAR was forced into there are these times where a sport is forced into a spotlight it doesn't want to be in. And this was one of those cases when, the unfortunate tragedy, and NASCAR met the moment and truly, I think, did a perfect balance of celebrating how big the Coke 600 weekend is and also celebrating the life of Kyle Busch. So I want to give NASCAR there. Also, flipping to the Indy 500, despite the fact that the man who finished second, his biggest fan resides in my house, and she was very heartbroken by the finish of the Indianapolis 500. and David Malukas falling short in the closest ever finish. I want to give a hat tip to all those drivers. That was in my life. She is screaming for David Malukas as I record this. I want to just say, in my lifetime, and now I am not the biggest IndyCar expert. Shout out to our IndyCar team. That was the greatest Indy 500 I've ever seen. I mean, you had 70 lead changes, including on the final lap, and you had a final lap with a guy who won it. Basically, did something that is unheard of at Indianapolis and went a whole lap in the outside lane, in the non-preferred lane, and still somehow had just barely enough to get past David Malukas and win. And shout out to Felix Rosenquist for just an epic final lap. One of the best final laps I think we've ever seen in the history of motorsports, where he just decided, I'm going to go all out. And now there are a lot of different factors. Marcus Armstrong, who you saw was heartbroken, mentioned how he literally had to lift or he was going to wreck his teammate. Shout out to David Malukas for literally doing everything right, like everything right to win the Indianapolis 500, and to have back-to-back years of finishing second. The Indy 500 is the best race every year. It was so good. It was such an epic race, and the passing, and I guess because they were racing, they think there was rain coming, and how it ended with a one-lap shootout, and it was just an epic race.
Trey, I got major FOMO because I thought about going. I'm like 3.5 hours away from Indy, and I went last year, and it was like the first year with the hybrid, and the race wasn't all that great. It felt like they really didn't pass a ton, and I was there last year with some of the rain, and there was rain in the forecast. I was like, I don't want to sit in the rain all day and go through all that song and dance, and then just watching it on TV, I was like, I wish I was there. Like, super major FOMO. I guess I saved me some money, but yeah, it was a great race.
It was indeed. Well, for Caleb Barnes at Caleb Barnes _ shout out to the producer Chris Graham helping put this together. You can follow me at Trey Lyle VT. Check out all our coverage from this past weekend. Check out the latest episode of Happy Hour. Holly Kane joined, talk about the life and legacy of Kyle Busch. If you did not watch about a week ago, our tribute Bringing the Heat to Kyle Busch, where we had multiple different perspectives. Caleb even hopped on. We had Tom Bowles hop on, Michael Massey, Dalton Hopkins, Derek Yoder, who hopped on, who was there at the track or at RCR. We had Tanner Marlar hop on as well, with a fitting tribute to that. Please check that out. We have a video on our YouTube page, youtube.com/frontstretch, that is 4 hours long. That shout out to Kevin Nix, who put together all the interviews we've gotten of Kyle Busch. Check out all the track content we got from this past weekend, and we're getting this weekend at Nashville. But just in with this final thought in terms of the life, the legacy of Kyle Busch for Rowdy. Life is too short, take granted. Make sure you tell the people you know you love them and you appreciate them. And I appreciate all of our listeners and all of our supporters here at frontstretch.com. So just want to end on that note. So for Caleb Barnes, for Chris Graham, I'm Trey Lyle, signing off on this episode of Bringing the Heat.